Hi, I'm Eric Stinson. I'm the Director of Product Management for Software and Security at Extreme Networks. And what we're going to do is introduce a brand new product that we just came out with called PerView. So when you look at what drove us to PerView, which is an application intelligence product, there's a couple sides, as there always is. There's market drivers and there's IT drivers. So obviously from a market side, you've got devices everywhere, and with the explosion of devices everywhere, you have applications everywhere, otherwise known as apps. Right? So the iPhone and Android, everything's now an app. And everybody expects it to work, and then they expect it to work well, which leads to the issues on the IT side. So on the IT side, in order for everything to work well, it can sometimes lead to complexity, and they need to make sure that they take care of that. A lot of things moving to software as a service, even the things that aren't the apps, right? So a lot of things moving to the cloud. So in order to make this all work, you need to be able to understand your applications. And here's where the dilemma comes in, because all of your users, whether it's a personal application like Facebook or a business application like Salesforce.com, that's how they see them. But the traditional network looks at that, and it looks at layer 2 to 4 traffic, and it's either port 80 or 8443, so HTTP or HTTPS. And that's an issue, right? So when somebody has a problem in using one of their applications, whether it's Salesforce.com or a whole host of other applications, they call the help desk. The help desk doesn't know what to do with it, right? Because to them, it's HTTP or HTTPS. So this is where PerView comes in, and it's the network-powered analytics and application analytics and optimization. So the reason we do network powered is by having the intelligence out at the switches, you can get a full view of all the applications at their source. And then that way you don't have to worry about choke points and everything else, which is what a lot of the products in the industry do. So through this, we answer some questions. So one is looking at business analytics. So there's a bunch of different things that we have customers doing with business analytics. So John mentioned the NFL, right? So the NFL looks at this, and they can understand, where do they want to invest their money? Do they invest their money in club-specific applications, or do they go ahead and invest their money in every other cool application that's out there that their users are using? We've got a large hospital that uses this in Germany. They were able to look at their network, and they were able to look and find that one of their applications, which happens to be a food services application where people go around to everybody, it's a 1,000-bed hospital, and get their menus for the day. The application response time was 30 seconds, right? Nobody complained. But by using PerView and understanding that, and then tracking that down and figuring what the problem was, they fixed that application, and 2 people out of the food services organization that used to have to go take orders every day have new things to do now in food services, right? So, it really improves that business. Another hospital in the United States looks at it, and they use a program called Meditech as their healthcare data, their healthcare platform. And like any business, there's always people that come and go and, high places in the business, and they want to say, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had this other application that I used to use where I used to work, right? That gets very expensive for the business because they've built their network around this application, okay? Changing out the application requires different infrastructure. It requires training, capital costs. So what they've done with PerView is they've gone in and they've gone and optimized the application performance for Meditech. And then that way it keeps the complaining down and reduces the application churn. And then another one, just rolling out new products. We have this at a large university in the Northeast. And they rolled out a new email system. And they've taken PerView and used it to make sure that people are using that new email system and aren't using 5 or 6 other email clients. And if they are, they can go back to those people because they can understand who's using them. They can go back to those people and find out why, right? So it's either, they need to do something different, or, they need to better educate their people. Looking from a user experience perspective, you've got, as you start to roll out new applications, a lot of high bandwidth applications, voice over IP. We have a customer with a large campus environment. They've got 20 buildings on their campus. and they were rolling out voice over IP. So they looked at it and said, okay, well, if I'm going to roll this out and keep my good user experience, how do I have to do that? Do I need to go ahead and increase the infrastructure, increase my link speeds, or are there things that I can do in my network? So they took PerView, they analyzed their network, and they realized that one of their biggest bandwidth intensive applications was actually time tracking software. And 90% of the people that use that time tracking software sat in one building, and the server was in another building across the entire campus. So by understanding what was going on in the network, they were able to move that server closer to their users, and then from there, they were able to roll out their voice over IP application, or actually video on demand, without having to go and re-architect their whole network. Right? So it's better understanding of what's going on. Yet another customer looking at user experience, they actually had somebody call in and one of their main business applications was being very slow for a particular user. Using PerView, they could look at it and say, well, is the network slow or is the application slow? They're able to notice that it was the network that was slow, and then they dug in further and said, okay, well, what is taking all the bandwidth over here in this wireless network? And by doing that, they were able to track it down to somebody streaming HD video, got the HD video shut down, and all of a sudden the business critical applications were working better again. So it's really, understanding how to troubleshoot, where to start troubleshooting so that you can optimize that experience for your users. Also looking at this from a security standpoint, a couple examples here. We've got a school in Australia. They've taken PerView and they've gone and they actually found BitTorrent running on their network, which isn't allowed on their network. They weren't necessarily looking for it. They could have looked for it. But what they were doing is they were in troubleshooting performance problems and then noticed a bunch of BitTorrent traffic and were able to take care of that. Another one is shadow IT becomes big, right? So I mentioned all the apps at the beginning. So especially storage, right? That's a big one. You got Dropbox, you've got SkyDrive, you've got Box, you've got all these different places you can put your data. We had this in one network, and looking at it, we tracked it down that there was a particular user who was uploading a gig of data every day to SkyDrive, and that wasn't the corporate storage solution, right? So you get to talk to that person and say, hey, why are you using SkyDrive? Maybe there's something that the corporate solution wasn't providing. And then if you also look at it, if you think about it, maybe it's not a big deal if you talk to this person and understand what they're doing. But if suddenly you see the big spike and then that person resigns, then you've got reason to go back and take a little deeper look. So how do we do this? I'm going to give you a quick intro to PerView here and how it works, and then Marcus is going to do a follow-on and dig deeper into the architecture of the solution. So PerView starts out, it is an application that runs in our NetSite product, our One Fabric Control Center. It has dashboards that you can see the high-level overview. You can drill in from there to find all kinds of information. So it's very easy to go in and slice and dice the information. And Marcus will show you that in a demo coming up. And it's everything from, what applications are on the network, what is the performance of those applications, what's the network response time versus the application response time, what users are using these or groups of users, right? So being able to dig in and get a lot of detail right from the switches. It's pervasive throughout the entire network. So again, going back to the network powered, right? So this gets fed out of the switches in the network. So each switch, and it's actually it's done in hardware, will mirror packets over that go through deep packet inspection to be analyzed and figure out what the application is. And then we enrich that data with other things like, information out of our NAC product, right? So you've got data that comes in, here's an application, and here's an IP address that's using it. And NAC has all sorts of other information, from usernames to device types and everything else that gets enriched into that data. The fingerprints are open and customizable, right? So this is something that's unique for us. So if you have custom applications running your network, think DoD or other things, other companies that really don't want to put their custom applications out for somebody to fingerprint them, they have the ability to go and create their own fingerprints. But out of the box, we've got over 13,000 fingerprints that will fingerprint over 7,000 applications. The fingerprints are based on two things. One is signatures and then also heuristics, so you can get very accurate with exactly what those applications are. Right? And it'll dig down to the level, it's not just Facebook, but it's, Farmville running on Facebook is the level that we can get to on these applications. And then finally, the detailed usage and performance information. So you can get that, as I mentioned, we enrich that data with other information that we have in the network and in the network management. So you can look at that performance per application, per user, device type, location. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can look at this. So picture a user calling in and saying, hey, the network's slow. All you need to do is real quickly go in, search by that user, and you can look and you say, okay, well, your network response time is actually pretty good, and most of your applications are responding pretty good, but here's one that isn't. And you can point that out to that user and then work with them to get that fixed. So just a quick overview on the architecture. Marcus will go into more detail here, but it starts out, as I mentioned, with the switches. So at the switch layer, the network layer. Using the CoreFlow 2 switches, what that will do is we've introduced new technology in there. They're an ASIC-based switch, and what the new technology does is it takes every new flow and it will mirror the first 15 to 30 some odd packets of that flow up here to the PerView engine. The PerView engine is where the fingerprints run. It will do deep packet inspection on that flow and decide exactly what that application is. Now, the other thing that these CoreFlow 2 switches do is they provide unsampled NetFlow data. That data also gets forwarded up to the PerView engine. The PerView engine correlates those two pieces of data and sends that up to One Fabric Control Center. Up in One Fabric Control Center, now it has a view of the whole application. So it's not just the fingerprint and the first X number of packets and understanding what that application is, but how long has the flow been up, how many bytes were transferred, and all the other information you get with the NetFlow data. And then that also, again, enriches it with the other data that NetSite has and with the NAC data as well. So you've got additional data about each of those flows and who's using the applications.